Are the Denver Broncos contenders or pretenders? In the wise words of Gary Kubiak, we're fixing to find out. The Denver Broncos are set to face their toughest three-game stretch of their schedule, and it all starts this week as they are set to travel to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. The Ravens, led by Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, boast a top-ranked offense in the league. They're incredible. They can beat you both through the air and on the ground. Lamar Jackson has really evolved into not just a threat on the ground, but also a threat in the pocket, through the air with his arm. Lamar Jackson has turned into a top-tier drop-back passing quarterback, along with what he already brings as a dynamic runner of the football. And then, speaking of dynamic runners of the football, you've got Derrick Henry, who's on pace for yet another 2,000-yard season, easily the best free agent signing of this offseason. This Ravens offense is truly elite. They've got a top-tier tight end duo with Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews. They've got other weapons in the receiving game. They've got they've got Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman. They just traded for Deontay Johnson. Lamar Jackson has the best plethora of weapons that he's had in his entire career to throw to, and it's unlocked a new level to Lamar Jackson's game. This Ravens offense has truly been elite in the first 8 weeks of the season. But on the other side of the ball, their defense has had some issues, especially their pass defense. They are towards the bottom of the NFL in almost every statistical category. In fact, in a lot of categories, they are ranked 32 in the league. The Ravens' pass defense is not good. Their run defense is towards the top of the league in almost every statistical category. But as we're going to talk about in this video, they've got some injuries up front that could make this run defense a little bit more vulnerable than they have been in weeks past. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. And if you guys are unfamiliar with how we do this, we break these opponents down, how we can attack them, what their strengths and weaknesses are, all that good stuff. This is really more of an opponent-centric video as opposed to a Denver Broncos-centric video. So this is how we get a pulse on what the Ravens are going to bring to the table. And I want to start off with the Baltimore Ravens injuries. Like I alluded to already, they are dealing with some injuries on their interior defensive line. Brent Urban and nose tackle Michael Pierce are both listed as out. In fact, Pierce went on injured reserve with a calf injury. Urban has a concussion. Additionally, defensive tackle Travis Jones is listed as questionable. They have elevated nose tackle Josh Tupou and defensive end Chris Wormley from the practice squad in hopes to be able to fill some of the void lost there. But that's not the only injuries that they are dealing with on the defensive side of the ball. Marlon Humphrey, their best corner, he leads their team with 4 interceptions. He's listed as questionable for this game. I think Humphrey's probably going to play, but still something to monitor. Additionally, cornerback Jalen Armour-Davis, who's more of a backup special teams player for them, listed as questionable. Keaton Mitchell, he is set to potentially make his season debut as he's coming back from a torn ACL and MCL that he suffered last year against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's a dynamic running back that could be another threat for them out of the backfield. He's listed as questionable. He might make his season debut. We will see. And then additionally listed as out is running back Rasheen Ali. So the Ravens are dealing with some injuries right now, and they're going to have to look to see if guys on that interior defensive line from the practice squad can step up. Their cornerback depth could also potentially be tested if Marlon Humphrey is unable to go in this game. But let's go ahead and bring in this Baltimore Ravens offense courtesy of Ourlads, one of my favorite websites out there. Their offensive coordinator is Todd Monken. He's brought more of a modern pro spread element to this offense as opposed to the heavy personnel days of Greg Roman. Their defensive coordinator is Zach Orr. He had massive shoes to fill with the departure of Mike Macdonald as the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. Orr, back in the day, actually played for the Baltimore Ravens, but to this point, he hasn't really lived up to what Mike Macdonald left. And then Chris Horton, their special teams coordinator, historically has been one of the best in the NFL. And then John Harbaugh one of the best CEO coaches in the league, where he's not really too privy when it comes to X's and O's per se, but he made his name in the league as a special teams coordinator and has been the Ravens head coach since 2008, has a Super Bowl ring, is consistently amongst one of the top teams in the NFL. John Harbaugh, he is truly a top-tier head coach. And their GM, Eric DaCosta, he works in tandem with John Harbaugh to build this roster. And the Ravens have always had some of the best depth in the NFL. They prioritize filling their needs through the draft, and that's one of the reasons why the Baltimore Ravens are always perennial contenders. But another reason why they're always perennial contenders is because they have one of the best quarterbacks in the game in Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is on pace to potentially win another MVP. It would be back-to-back wins of the award for him, and it would be the third time in his career that he has won an MVP. Obviously, there's still another half of the season to go, but Lamar Jackson, he has been truly elite. 66.9% completion, 2,099 yards, 17 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 81 carries, 501 yards, 6.2 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns on the ground. He's the third best quarterback in the NFL in EPA per play. He's got a 53.2% success rate, which is first in the league. 4.1 completion percentage over expected, which is 7th. 8.4 air yards per attempt, tied for 8th. 10 big-time throws, tied for 13th. Just 4 turnover-worthy plays, which is towards the bottom of the league. He doesn't turn the football over. He keeps the ball out of harm's way. That includes backups. He's ranked 33rd in the NFL in terms of turnover-worthy plays, and that's 33rd in terms of good, not 33rd in terms of bad. When he's blitzed, 65.9% completion, 887 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. So the Denver Broncos, they are a blitz-heavy team. I think we might see a little bit less of that against a guy like Lamar Jackson, especially because he can beat your blitz both with his arm and with his legs. He can beat you with a throw by throwing hot, and he can scramble out of trouble when you blitz him as well. When he's not blitzed, 67.6% completion, 1,212 yards, 12 touchdowns, 1 interception. So even when you don't blitz him and drop back and play zone coverage or just play straight on man and only rush 4, he's still going to find a way to kill you. Lamar Jackson is a guy that's almost undefendable. Vance Joseph said it himself in his press conference this week that you can't really game plan for him. You almost have to get a feel for what he's doing well in that given game and then sell out to stop that. And then more often than not, he's just going to fall back on whatever else he can do. Lamar Jackson is truly a dynamic threat that is so hard to defend, and that's why he gives defensive coordinators nightmares. These guys are up all night trying to find ways to slow down Lamar Jackson, and it's almost impossible. You almost have to catch Lamar on a day where he's just off. You can't really anticipate that either. So it's just really hard, man. This is why Lamar Jackson is in contention to win the 3rd MVP of his career. He's that good. He really is. And like I talked about, he has evolved his game from just being a pure running quarterback to being a quarterback who can run. There's a big difference. Lamar Jackson can stand in the pocket. He can read out the coverage. He can pick apart your zone coverage. He can identify his matchups that he likes against man, and he can pick you apart through the air. Again, man, Lamar Jackson, the toughest quarterback probably in the NFL to defend. And the Ravens went out and they added Derrick Henry to complement this Ravens offense even further. That was the best move that any team made in free agency this offseason. The Dallas Cowboys get a lot of crap for not being able to sign Derrick Henry because Jerry Jones didn't want to fork out the dough. But I think we should also give the Tennessee Titans some crap for not bringing back Derrick Henry, because that looks like an absolutely foolish decision as well. King Henry on the season, 145 attempts, 946 yards in just 8 games, on pace for 2,000 yards once again, 6.5 yards per carry, 9 touchdowns, 118.3 yards per game. He's also being utilized in a lot of different types of rushes. 77 zone run attempts, 68 gap run attempts. So that's a pretty close to even split there. They're using him in a lot of different ways. The Ravens backfield, they're also potentially going to get another boost this week with Keaton Mitchell coming back. And then Justice Hill on the season, 25 catches, 229 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So he's been great as a pass catcher out of the backfield. We talked about Ali being out, and then they got Chris Collier there as well. So along with Lamar Jackson, this Ravens backfield is completely dynamic. And that complements what Lamar does so well. They've got their fullback, Pat Ricard, who is a big part of what they do on offense as well. He can catch passes. He can block. He is a guy who does a lot of the dirty work for them. Got to give some love to the fullback. We already talked about Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely on the year. Mark Andrews has been Mr. Steady, Mr. Dependent for Lamar Jackson for all of his years in the NFL. But this year, it's really been Isaiah Likely who has stepped up. 33 receptions for 271 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's not to say that Andrews hasn't been his usual self either. 27 catches, 263 yards, and 4 touchdowns for Andrews. But Isaiah Likely has given them yet another threat at the tight end position. They've got Charlie Kolar is there as well. He's not a bad player in his own right. This Ravens team, they've got multiple different weapons. And then getting into the receiving core, Zay Flowers has 61 catches for 527 yards and a touchdown. Rashad Bateman, 35 catches, 422 yards and 3 touchdowns. So both of those guys have been fantastic. They added Deontay Johnson into the mix from the Carolina Panthers. They've got Tylan Wallace, who's a speed merchant. He doesn't really see the field much. And then Devontrez Walker, and then Nelson Aguilar, another speed merchant who's been in the NFL for a long time. They've also got an offensive line that I feel like has played a lot better over these last few weeks. They weren't playing very good football in the beginning of the year, but I think they've settled down a lot more as time has gone on. They've got Ronnie Stanley, the veteran left tackle. Although he's dealt with some injuries over the past few years, he's still a very reliable player. He can still get the job done for you at left tackle. Pat McCary at left guard. He's been a veteran for them for the last several years. Tyler Linderbaum, he's probably the best center in the game, not named Creed Humphrey now that Jason Kelsey is retired. Daniel Falele, he struggled at the beginning of the year. Again, I think he's settled down. And what's really made this Ravens offensive line sort of gel more is the addition of Roger Rosengarten, their second-round pick out of Washington, native of Denver, actually. So he's going to be going up against his hometown team. But this Ravens offensive line has really settled down over these last few weeks, and they've gotten a lot better as time has gone on. But moving into this defensive side of the ball, and there's no beating around the bush. This pass defense for the Ravens is god-awful. 2,493 passing yards allowed, 67, and that's last in the NFL, 67.2% completion allowed, 22nd in the NFL, 8.1 yards per attempt allowed, which is tied for second to last, 17 pass touchdowns allowed, tied for second to last, 5 interceptions, which is middle of the pack, 39 20-plus yard pass plays given up, which is last in the league, 48.8 drop pack success rate allowed, which is towards the bottom of the pack. This pass defense is not good, man. And it's kind of perplexing, too, because they've got talented pieces such as Marlon Humphrey, but on the other side, Ardarius Washington struggled. Ardarius Washington at nickel. Brandon Stevens on the other side, he's also struggled. You've got Kyle Hamilton and Eddie Jackson in the defensive backfield. Marcus Williams actually recently got benched, so it's kind of been bad news bears for this Ravens secondary. And with Marlon Humphrey listed as questionable, if he can't go, then it's going to be even worse for them on a unit that's already been really, really bad. But this run defense, you got to give them credit. They've been fantastic. 559 rush yards allowed, which is first. 3.3 yards per carry allowed, again first. 28 rushing first downs, second. 31.6 rush success rate, which is first. So this run defense has been phenomenal, and that all really starts with Roquan Smith, their leading tackler on the season with 82 tackles. Trenton Simpson alongside him has been good. Kyle Hamilton comes downhill and he plays the run really well. Those have all been really key factors in their run defense, but also has their interior line with Michael Pierce, who is now out for at least the next 4 games. Nnamdi Madubuike, formerly known as Justin Madubuike, Travis Jones, Brent Urban. These guys not being out there is definitely going to hurt, man. Broderick Washington and Nnamdi Madubuike, those are the only starters that you have out there originally from your unit. So again, it's going to be tough for this Ravens run defense to replicate their success from previous weeks because of some of the injuries that they are dealing with. Their pass rush has been decent enough. Kyle Van Noy leads them in sacks with 7.5, I should say. Odafe Owe on the other side at edge rusher has 4.5 sacks. Madubuike has 2 sacks. Kyle Hamilton has 2 sacks as well. We already talked about Roquan Smith and Trenton Simpson. They've got some decent depth on their defense as well. Yannick Ngakoue still kicking around. Arthur Mollett. I guess now Marcus Williams is a depth guy. They've got some decent depth there on their defense for sure. But again, they're going to have to figure out some of their woes on their pass defense. And again, in terms of run defense, we'll see what happens with some of the injuries that they're dealing with on their interior defensive line. On special teams, Justin Tucker has not been his normal self. He's just 13 for 17 on field goals this year and 2 for 5 on attempts from 50 plus. So Tucker has struggled a bit. He's not been as reliable and dependent than he has been in previous years. So that's something to keep an eye on if this maybe comes down to a possible game-winning field goal attempt for Justin Tucker. He hasn't been as automatic as he has been in years past. So overall, this Ravens team all runs through their offense, and it's going to be really tough for this Broncos team to match up against that offense. Even though their defense has played well, I have no idea what this defense is going to look like against the best offense that they faced off against all season long. But on the other side of the ball, I think the Broncos offense should be able to do what they want, especially through the air against this reeling Ravens pass defense. So some keys to victory for the Denver Broncos. They're going to have to keep up with the Ravens on offense. They're probably going to have to win a shootout type of game. They can't start slow. They can't turn the ball over, especially early. We saw them with early turnovers in the Chargers game and in the Panthers game. And against the Panthers, you can overcome that. Against an opponent like the Chargers, you weren't able to overcome that. You're definitely not going to be able to overcome that against a team like the Baltimore Ravens. If the Broncos get the ball to start the game, I want them to use hurry up. You want them to get that Ravens defense gassed, get them tired, and get them having to really struggle out there, especially later on in the drive. Then another advantage to hurry up is that it doesn't allow the Ravens defense to sub. So they'll have to keep personnel on the field that they don't exactly want to have out there. So it really does give an advantage to the Denver Broncos offense in that regard. Quick passing game, get Bo Nix in a rhythm early, get his feet set, and just get him comfortable. We saw him get comfortable early in the game against Carolina. I want them to do a very similar thing in the game here against the Baltimore Ravens. Stay committed to the run game, even if it's not working, because it will help set up play action shots down the field. It just helps keep the defense honest. You don't want them to strictly be playing the pass, because then the Broncos pass game is going to start struggling. You want to be able to open up those play action shots, and the only way you can do that is stay committed to the run, even if it's not working. No stupid penalties. Don't beat yourself. No pre-snap penalties. No false starts. No jumping off sides. Nothing stupid like that. Again, if you get the lead, keep your foot on the gas for all 4 quarters. This is a Ravens team where no lead is safe against them. You've got to stay on the gas, you've got to stay aggressive, and you cannot relinquish a lead if you get it. On defense, you got to kind of get a feel for what this Ravens team is doing, how Lamar Jackson is playing, if he's more of a thrower or a runner on that given day. Get a feel for that and then sell out to stop what is working for this Ravens defense. Or for this Ravens offense, excuse me. And then no hero ball on defense. Don't try to sell out to strip the ball. You got to just worry about wrapping up and tackling Lamar. Otherwise, he's going to break tackles. Just survive the down. If the Denver Broncos can do that, I think they will be able to keep up with this Ravens team, but it's so hard to bet against Lamar Jackson and King Henry and that Ravens offense. I think ultimately that unit is going to prevail. I think the Broncos are going to go into Baltimore and fight the good fight, but I do have them losing 31-28 in a high-scoring affair. I think both offenses are going to play well. I think Bo Nix is going to have another strong game, but ultimately, I think that it's going to come down to which offense makes the play in the end, and I have the Ravens offense making that play at the end, but it could very easily go the other way. This Ravens team is a lot more vulnerable on paper than you would have expected them to be at the beginning of the year, and remember, the Broncos had a very similar daunting stretch in their schedule as they did this season last year, and they were able to get wins on the road against a win on the road against Buffalo and win at home against Kansas City. This could be a similar type of situation, man. If the Ravens can get road wins against Baltimore and Kansas City and then come back home to face Atlanta, this team could be in a stretch where it would be almost impossible for the Broncos not to make the playoffs. But overall, until they prove that they can do that, I am going to stick with the Baltimore Ravens winning this game 31-28. All right, Broncos country, let me know in the comment section below, what is your prediction for this game? Do you think the Broncos are going to be able to keep up with the Ravens? Do you think they're going to be able to take advantage of this poor Ravens pass defense? What is your score prediction for this game? Drop those comments down below, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts, as always. Be sure to leave a like on this video, as well as subscribe and ring the bell so these videos appear in your notification feed. I would really appreciate it, guys. Those are both free and easy ways to show your support. Helps tell YouTube's algorithm to push us out, and it helps us get seen by more and more members of Broncos country, just like you and me. And until next time, guys, I'm your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.